2025 is almost over, and I think we can all agree it was a lot. So I went back and looked at everything I made this year. Some of it is beautiful, some of it is deeply concerning, but either way, today I'm rating all of my art on an emotional damage scale because apparently I don't believe in coping mechanisms. So January, I was almost halfway through my final year at uni studying fine art. If you've seen my video about my experience at uni, you already know the full story. But even if you haven't, the short version is, I was not starting the year calm. So everything I made in January kind of reflects that. So this was the first piece I made in January, literally finished on the 1st of January, called Deliver Us From Ourselves, which in hindsight is already very telling. At the time, I was deep in my final year at uni, carrying a lot of pressure, and this feeling that the real danger wasn't anything external, it was what was happening inside my own head. I think everyone's had that moment where you're not asking to be saved from the world, you're asking kind of to be saved from yourself. And this piece feels like anxiety turning in on itself. There is no real villain here, it is just accumulation. On the emotional damage scale, I would say this one's a B tier. I see what I was trying to say. It works, the imagery is strong, the feeling is very real, but it's not my favourite piece, and that's completely okay. This feels like me circling something important before I knew how to say it properly. The next piece of January is Dinner for the Dog, and this is actually one of my favourite pieces from January. This one feels quieter on the surface but way more pointed. It's about power dynamics being watched and being evaluated while pretending everything is polite. Everyone's close, everyone's calm, but she's already decided what she's going to do. There's something really unsettling to me about how still it is. Like, the violence is very social and not physical. On the emotional damage scale, I'd say this is definitely an A tier. This definitely changed something in me and the course of my work. This was one of the first times I felt like I was saying exactly what I meant in 2025 without having to explain myself too deeply. Next is Snail. This one is not my favourite. I can definitely see what I was trying to do here. It's about slowness and carrying something so heavy for so long, and in this case it would be like home life, since a snail shell is quite literally its home. But honestly, it feels a bit too literal. This was me trying to really force a metaphor instead of letting it happen naturally, and I'm gonna be honest, the piece was quite rushed. So I'm gonna put this in C tier. It's artistically necessary, but very questionable. It definitely taught me something, mainly that not everything needs to be explained so directly. Moving on, we now have February, and the first piece I made in February was Tenebris Solace. And honestly, February is where things started to slow down and really sharpen for me. This is one of my favourite pieces, especially the fabric. It feels so controlled and shiny and heavy and completely intentional. It's not an S tier for me still, but it's a really strong A tier. So, as always on the emotional damage scale, this is an A tier. This changed something in me. Not because it hurts, but because it showed me what I could do when I stopped rushing myself. Next for February we have Predation, and this one was very different for me. Up until this point, a lot of my work was very internal and about self-surveillance and very much portraiture. But this piece wasn't really about that. This is about systems and power and about what happens when certain bodies are always treated as consumable. There's no direct softness here. There's no metaphor that's trying to be polite. It's very blunt, and honestly, it was meant to be. I don't think this piece is as strong as some of my other pieces to be an A, so I'm going to plop this in B tier on the emotional damage scale. I completely see what I was trying to say. It works, it says something very important, but it feels like a turning point rather than a complete destination for my work. Okay, the first to C. I'm just gonna be honest, I really don't like this one. This was around the time I was planning my final year exhibition, and originally I had this idea of multiple faces leading you towards one central piece. Conceptually, it made sense. Visually, I hated it. It felt more like set dressing rather than a standalone work. It's not saying anything particular on its own, it was waiting for something else to justify it. So for me, I really didn't like that because all my other pieces, they all said something. So on the emotional damage scale, this is definitely a D tier in my eyes. why did I make this public? It's not offensive or even awful in any way, it's just empty. It feels empty in a way that doesn't feel intentional. This one is We Must Not Speak of It, and it's directly connected to the previous piece. This was me still thinking about silence, who gets silence, and how often that silence is enforced quietly. Less about violence, more about compliance. Hands over mouths, eyes closed, everything and everyone participating. Conceptually, I thought it was quite a strong piece, but it still feels like I'm circling the idea and not quite landing it yet, the same as the previous piece. It needed something else to justify it. On the emotional damage scale, I think this is definitely a C tier. It's a bit higher than the other one, but still missing so much. It's artistically necessary, but very questionable. Moving on to March. This one's called What Did You Expect? This was still connected to the We Must Not Speak of It, and she was the first to see idea, following figures, leading the viewer, trying to build something cumulative. And honestly, this is where I started realizing I didn't like that direction anymore. It's a good piece and technically it works, but emotionally, it's just meh. I feel like I'm forcing an idea I already knew wasn't right from the first piece I made for the idea. So on the emotional damage scale, this is a C tier. Artistically necessary, but questionable. Now I'm showing Communion of the Damned, and I actually really love this piece. At first I hated it, but now I look at it, it's really quite something. This was originally meant to be the centerpiece of my final show alongside the previous pieces, but when I realised I didn't like the original exhibition idea anymore, I didn't scrap it, I just didn't use it. And that was a really important moment for me, because the piece still works on its own. It's very controlled and deliberate, but it belonged just as is on its own, not with those other pieces. On the emotional damage scale, this is an A tier. This definitely changed something in me. Not because it hurt the most, I definitely made worse pieces, but because it proved I could make something powerful without forcing it into the wrong context. So this is where I finally move into the work I made for the actual degree show. At this point I knew I was printing everything except the main piece onto woodboard, and I realised something really simple but important. A lot of my earlier work that I had originally put out for this show was very cold toned, and when it was up on the wood it looked almost clinical, which isn't bad, but for me that didn't work with the wood and it kind of drained the life out of it. So I made a decision to warm everything up and let the material actually speak. This was the first piece where I really thought about that properly, and this piece is called Think Pretty Thoughts, which I realised I haven't said yet. So for me, on the emotional damage scale, this is definitely a B tier. I see what I was trying to say. I think I did it well, even. It did exactly what it needed to do without trying to be more than that and without being too ambiguous. This one is Obedient Creature, and this was also originally meant for the show, but I ended up scrapping it completely, not because the idea or concept was bad, but because I really hated the outcome. I think this is where I realised that just because something fits the theme doesn't mean it deserves a place on the wall. I'm gonna give it a D tier on the emotional damage scale. Why did I ever make this public? It's not the worst thing I've ever made, I'll be honest, but it doesn't represent me and it definitely didn't belong in the show. Now moving on to April. This piece is called Pre-Burn and I really love it. It's about the moment before something terrible happens, not the violence of it, but the preparation of it. Everything here is calm, efficient, almost carefully composed. That calm is the threat. On the emotional damage scale, I'm gonna give it an A tier. Shoot me if I'm wrong, but I think this definitely changed something in me. Not because it's explosive or chaotic like some of my other pieces, but because it really taught me how much tension you can hold without showing anything at all. Okay, finally I think we might have ourselves an S tier piece. This is Meat for the Gods. This was the main piece for my degree show, and yeah, I'm gonna have to blur some of it for YouTube. This piece was about consumption and reverence and violence existing in the same breath. It's very beautiful and indulgent, almost erotic, but it is also very deeply uncomfortable. There is no metaphor here that's trying to be gentle. This is what everything else was building towards. On the emotional damage scale, I'm gonna give it an S tier. I would absolutely defend this in court. I wouldn't soften it, I wouldn't re-explain it, and I wouldn't change it to make anyone more comfortable. This is the piece where everything finally aligned for my project, the whole concepts, the materials, which it was printed on fabric by the way, and what I actually was trying to say. I really believe that this is the work I was trying to make all year. So this one is Leak. I'll be honest, this was kind of a filler piece. I had more wall space than work, and this one came out of necessity rather than intention. It's not my favourite, but weirdly, this is one of the pieces people connected with the most. People stood in front of this one for a long time. They didn't always know what to say about it, but they definitely felt something, and honestly, I think I'll take that. On the emotional damage scale, this is a B tier, purely because the audience carried it. It wasn't my strongest conceptual work, but it proved that raw emotion doesn't always need a perfect framework for it to actually make an impact. This was the final piece of my degree show, and it is titled Growing Pains. I'll be honest, this was another filler piece. When I made it, I didn't love it. Technically, it is not my strongest work. Visually, it doesn't hit as hard as the others. But conceptually, this is one of the pieces I think I relate to the most. It's about change that hurts and that growth isn't beautiful yet. Not becoming something powerful, just becoming something else. It felt right to end the show here, not with a climax, but more with an aftermath. So I'm going to give this a C tier on the emotional damage scale. Artistically necessary, but still a bit questionable. Now moving on to May. This is the first piece of May and the first one after uni actually ended. It's called Mothlight. This is me stepping away from uni work and trying to find something new. It's very different to what I'd been making. It's quite soft and calm. It doesn't really demand anything from the viewer, and after everything before this, that felt really important for me. On the emotional damage scale, this sits in B tier. I see what I was trying to say. It wasn't huge or groundbreaking, but it's honest. For me, it wasn't about shock anymore, it was about seeing if quiet could still hold meaning. This piece is We Were Happy Once, Weren't We? I love this piece. It's about losing friendships, not because of a big fight, but because you gave everything and slowly realised there was nothing left to give. Nothing dramatic happens here apart from the big crack in the floor. They're still sitting together, still touching, but something has already broken. This one hurts very quietly. It's not rage or betrayal, it's the grief of looking back and thinking, we were happy once, weren't we? On the emotional damage scale, this is an A tier. This definitely changed something in me, because it lingers. This is the first piece of June, Handle with Care. I really love this piece. Again, it's about fragility, but not in a pretty romanticised way. It's about being packed up, contained, labelled as delicate. There's care implied here, but also restriction. You're kind of safe as long as you don't move. What I love about this one is how quiet it is. There's no violence or urgency, just someone folded into a shape that is acceptable. It feels gentle, and I think that's what makes it feel sad. On the emotional damage scale, I think this is an A tier, no question. This definitely changed something in me again, not because it shocks you, but because it recognises something a lot of people live with. Being told you're fragile and realising that care can still kind of feel like a cage. This one is Soft Apocalypse, and it is the first piece of July. I don't love this one. It's pretty and I think technically it works, but conceptually there's just not much there. At this point I think I was chasing more of a vibe than a feeling. I like the idea of a soft apocalypse, beauty at the end of the world, but it didn't have anything personal anchoring it. And you can see that, let alone feel it. It's not bad, it just feels kind of empty, and for me that matters. On the emotional damage scale, I'm gonna put this in Why Did I Make This Public? D tier. Not because it's embarrassing, but because it doesn't say anything I needed it to say. It looks nice, but you don't remember it. This one is Glass Orchard, and I don't like this one either. It's symbolic in a way that feels too tidy. There's glass fruit, temptation, fragility. I knew what I was referencing, but I wasn't inside it. It feels like a painting I understood, not one I necessarily lived through. Technically it's fine, aesthetically it's fine. Emotionally, it doesn't have that bite I would like. It doesn't cost me anything to look at it. So again, I'm going to put this piece into Why Did I Make This Public? D tier. This one you can look at a distance and walk right past, and for me, that's the opposite of what I want my work to do. This is Velatura, the first piece of August. I do like this one, but it is a bit bland. This was me leaning heavily into technique, with soft edges, beautiful transitions, safe lighting, and technically it works. But it doesn't ask anything of the viewer necessarily. It's very polite, and politeness isn't really what my work's about. I think we've established that with previous works from my Damnation project. I think this fits best in B tier. I see what I was trying to say. It has very strong control, it has that classical restraint, but it's emotionally withheld, and there is some metaphor in here about the armor, but I just could never properly put it into words. I would love to one day, maybe you can, but yeah, it is more of a study for me rather than a confession. Now we have the first piece of September. This is Where Roses Take Root. I love this piece. It's not the most chaotic thing I've made, but it's one I always find myself looking at lovingly. This one doesn't scream, it sort of just stays. It feels like something that survived. There's pain in it, but it is very quiet. The roses aren't decorative, they're growing through the skin, and I think that's why I trust it. For me, this piece belongs in A tier, and for me it shows that not all damage is violent. This piece is titled The Sacred Feeling of Living in a Body I Wish Wasn't Mine. It's very personal and very vulnerable. It's not my favourite piece I've ever made, but it does break my heart. This piece wasn't necessarily asking to be admired, it was asking to be left alone with its truth. There's no performance, there's no symbolism, no clever metaphor to hide behind it. It's just simply weight and flesh and grief that hasn't really learned how to speak yet. For me, I'm going to put it in C tier. It's artistically necessary but questionable, not because it's bad. I know I've said this so many times now, but it definitely cost me something. I didn't make it to like it, I made it because it was there, and for me it was a very sacred feeling. It's about me. I won't go into detail because I'm hoping to make more videos talking about my work soon. This is Do Not Touch the Holy Thing. I love this piece again. It's the first piece of October, and you can probably tell this is where something definitely clicks again. It's about boundaries and sacredness, about parts of yourself people feel entitled to. This piece has clarity. It's not apologetic or chaotic. It knows what it's protecting, it knows who it's speaking to and where the line is. The heart isn't being offered, it is just being held. With that being the core focus, that is what changed everything for this piece. I'm gonna say that this is an easy S tier. I would definitely defend this piece in court because the symbolism is clean, the restraint is intentional, the emotion is very controlled. It didn't need to scream, and the meaning behind it I think is very raw as well, about having a heart that's handled by so many people so many different times to the point that is very close to breaking completely. Again, not gonna go too much in detail, more coming soon. This is Dear Logic. This is the final piece of October and the last piece I've made this year. It's insane to me, the emotion and the meaning. I haven't made anything since. I'm completely burnt out, I'm not gonna lie. I think you can tell by how much work I have made this year, and that this one took everything. This for me isn't just a strong artwork, it's a complete terminal point. Everything before it was vulnerability, rage, grief, restraint, reclamation. All of it collapses into one image. The antlers aren't power, they're exposure. The red dot isn't decoration, it's inevitability. And the expression? Oh my god, that's the moment before reaction. The freeze response made that so visible for me, and I have never related, I think personally, to a piece more than I have with this one. Reason unknown for now, but I'll talk about it later. There is no debate here that I would definitely put this into S tier. I would defend this in court, because this isn't just good, it is true, not just as a metaphor, but as an instinct. So yeah, that's everything I made this year. There's a few I haven't included because of commercial rights, etc, etc. There's also a lot of whips I haven't included, but I don't want to include unfinished work because I need the time to finish them, obviously. It was a lot this year, and it took a lot out of me, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know what 2026 will look like for me creatively yet, but I'm still trying to let myself rest without guilt. If you've connected with any of these pieces, my shop is still open and I am still accepting orders, but please bear in mind there might be a few delays due to shops and print studios being shut. Supporting my work, even just by sharing it, genuinely means the world to me. I hope everyone has a wonderful new year. Be gentle with yourselves, and I will see you all in the very next video.